Hello, and welcome to the Catch a Break podcast, the insider's guide to breaking into and navigating the entertainment industry. Season 2 of Catch a Break is brought to you by Cachet, the production credit card. Manage your cards and spend in real time and get cash back on every dollar you spend on your show with Cachet. I'm Julie Harris Walker, and today on the podcast we'll be talking about financing for independent films with Adam Hendricks, producer and one of the founders of the company called Divide and Conquer. The company has produced more than 20 feature films, most notably Magnolia's Lucky, Netflix's Cam, IFC Midnight's The Wind, Kelly Oxford's Pink Skies Ahead, and Universal Pictures' Black Christmas, just to name a few. So welcome to Catch a Break, the insider's guide to breaking into and navigating Hollywood. And today we're going to talk with Adam Hendricks.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you so much.
So I want to give the quick bio, which is you work for a company, or is it your company?
Yes. I'm a partner with two others in this company called Divide and Conquer, and we produce feature films, but have this extensive background in commercials, music videos, short films. That's where we started, and now we typically make movies.
That's wonderful. So you started in short form, then you expanded, and now you're doing
exactly
big feature films. Great. Okay, so
Perfect.
The first thing I want to ask you is, what was your first job and how did you get it?
Yes. So I was a USC student taking classes, and I liked it a lot, but I was mostly learning about film criticism and film theory. Mm-hmm. But then I took an internship with New Line Cinema. I was really interested in New Line because those are the movies I really remembered during the 90s. You know, it was like the Paul Thomas Anderson films, but also Menace to Society, but also Blade, but also Austin Powers. It was just this really great Seven. It was this crazy just variety of different types of films. So I worked in the travel department because I wanted a foot in the door, and which was so silly, but
you got in the door.
But I got in the door, and from that I got moved over to internship in acquisitions, where I learned that was at Fine Line, their acquisitions division, and after that, there was an opportunity where I could be an on-call temp there, and it would require being a full-time job. So I realized I had enough credits to leave school early, and I realized that I was learning more in my internship than I was at school.
Yeah.
So, and the other thing is that by leaving school early, I got out in December, and I sort of beat the wave of other students also looking for work. So I was really fortunate that I was able to get in and start doing this on-call temp.
So did you graduate?
I did graduate, yes. I had enough credits to graduate.
So that internship, did that get you in every department? So you got to see everything?
Yes. So as an on-call temp, you jump from each department. So I was in business affairs and music. And I'll say this, I never deep dove into any of these departments. I didn't really learn them from the inside out like you would hope, but I got enough of a taste of all of them. But I think more than that, I learned sort of business acumen and I mean, I just have to be honest, when I was young, I was so desperate to be in this business, and I was so young and naive that I think that I wore that on my sleeve.
Hi guys, hi.
Yeah, exactly. I was anything I can do. And, but yeah, I think that going through meeting all these different types of people helped give me a style of speaking, a style of understanding that I sort of knew how to navigate it after going through it.
So you were paying attention.
I was trying to pay attention.
This is how we act in this business.
Yes.
Good.
It's like that thing where it's if there's a group of friends, you kind of stay out on the outside a little bit, see how they're interacting before you sort of jump in, mm-hmm. and then you sort of recognize how
am I going to fit in here?
Exactly.
Yeah. Smart.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's get into it. So I'm going to jump in with you guys produce movies for Blumhouse sometimes.
Yes.
How did that all come about?
So, right. We've produced 17 features, 10 have been with Blumhouse in some capacity. So before we had made a single feature film as a company, and I should just say, I had made a film myself as an individual before partnering up. It was $100,000, just, learned it there. But then when we formed a company, it was really hard for us to get a movie up and going. And so we did a lot of short form, but we did apply and get into the Sundance producing labs, which was incredibly helpful. It was helpful in the sense that the institution serves as great mentors to this business. It's a really strong and vibrant community. They put a nice seal of approval on you, which kind of helps open doors.
Yeah.
But the most important thing they actually did was at the end of the lab, they asked you, who do you want to be your mentor? And we said, Jason. Jason Blum. And so they introduced us, and it's interesting because it's not that he became a mentor. He became like, he was more interested in like, he had seen that we'd done all these things. I remember sitting in the room and he was like, so what have you done? And we kind of like went through the list, and he was like, oh, you don't need a mentor. You need someone to help you make movies.
You need a job.
Yeah. So, they started, and it's interesting because that company became a mentor. Like, Jeanette, the head of physical production, Cooper, the head of production, Charles, the CEO, like all these different people became kind of mentors for us in these different divisions. And, Jason helped introduce us to filmmakers, introduce us to scripts that they had developed there, but didn't really fit their like $3 to $5 million pipeline, and helped secure financing for some of these films, for all these films. So, through that, we were able to make these 10 films, and then in between those making other films. And what's great is not just the opportunity to make those movies and to work with new filmmakers, but because we were now making films at this steady clip, other people became interested in us. And so, for instance, after our first 2 films with Jason, we went off and made this movie Lucky with Harry Dean Stanton. It was his last movie. And John Carroll Lynch directing. Like, that was an opportunity, I think, that only happened because we were becoming so proficient at filmmaking.
It's an amazing launching pad.
Incredible. And I think, I know that there's that old like adage of like, luck is opportunity meets preparation. And I definitely feel that. At the same time, I recognize that we also really hit something really lucky and appreciate it.
That's amazing. That's really great. Okay, so how do you look for projects? Let's start there.
It's tough because we get an incredible amount of unsolicited material. We have agents and managers sending us scripts. But to be honest, it's so hard to get a project made that the thing that I think we're actually looking for is repeat business with the filmmakers that we've been coming up with. So for instance, like there's this great filmmaker, Mike Mohan, who in our early days, we did multiple commercials with. We did the short film Pink Grapefruit that played Sundance and won South by. Like, he's someone that like, we want to know what his next script is. We want to know what he's interested in doing. We've made all these films, and a lot of times we've come onto films that we haven't raised the financing for. I mean, for Blumhouse, we never raised the financing for any of these films. And same with a lot of the other movies we've done. Like, people will often come to us because they need help navigating everything from like the physical production to the post to the festival play. But through that experience, we get to work with these new filmmakers. So for instance, we made this great movie, Cam. I say great because I objectively love it. Like, isn't that nice? Like, I don't think it's a subjective thing. But like,
you're not miserable about what you're doing.
Right, exactly. But there are these great filmmakers on it, Danny Goldhaber and Issa Mazet, who like, I just want to make every film that they do going forward. And I think that's, so to answer your question, like we look to the filmmakers we love working with to find our next project. Yeah.
Yeah. We keep hearing that over and over again in every aspect, that your relationships are so vitally important. Well,
and also I think a script isn't as important as people make it out to be. Like, a script is merely a blueprint and one part of a larger machine of things that need to come together. And it's true that like, you don't want a bad screenplay, but also I don't think there's such thing as a perfect screenplay, because I've talked about this a lot, but I think that mentally speaking, I think especially on the development side, people approach screenplays as this sort of like ice sculpture that you kind of whittle down to perfection. And then once it goes into production, it's just sort of melting, and you need to like try and keep it in place as much as possible. When you're done, you're like, oh, it only melted this much.
Yeah.
Whereas we look at it as this sort of like, as the foundation to build off of. So for us, the script, it's not about a perfect script. It's actually about a script that attracts great creative people, from directors to department heads to actors, and it's about those people elevating it beyond what you could get off of a page. Otherwise, we'd all just read screenplays for fun.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. All right. So say you find a great script or a great partner, a great project.
Yeah.
What is your very first step?
It's tough because I think that it completely depends on what form that project comes to us in. Like I said before, like we have literally been handed projects with financing already in place. We've been handed projects with partial financing. We have to raise the rest. We've been handed projects where it is like a script and a filmmaker, and now we're starting at square one.
If it's that scenario, say, would you option that or would you buy that?
So we don't have any of our own money.
Okay.
We've optioned things in the past for like an incredibly low amount. It's like nothing close to a WJ minimum, but just as a sort of like...
Just enough to lock it in for a minute?
Yeah, or a show of good faith. But even then, it's like, I think even though we're a company, like we don't really have much overhead. Like we're really like a band, you know? So for us, it's like, we don't have the money. We don't have it to offer people. That's not an enticing thing.
So you don't have a big development budget that
we have none.
Breaking stuff up, right?
Exactly.
Okay. You're saying, let's make this film. How do we make this film?
Yeah, we're looking for like strategic partners. We're looking for people who are gonna stick with us because we care about their project. We try and keep an incredibly small slate. And our deal with our filmmakers is that like, if you trust us with your project, we are going to do the distance for you. We're going to keep hustling until we get the thing made. I mean, unfortunately for some of those, it's been years, but I don't, even if that's the case, even with like, I'm thinking there's this incredible project. It's called Black Bats. It was our Sundance Lab project, and it's had it's had a crazy roller coaster of like, we got the money, we lost the money, we've got a distributor, we've lost a distributor. Like and yet people are big fans of it. It's something that like we have not slowed down trying to make.
Because you're going to find that moment where everything comes together.
Exactly.
That's going to be made. Then that'll be your story at the Oscars. It took 10 years.
and that's the thing is I think showing that persistence with that project extends to all of our projects. So I that's sort of the oath we make with our filmmakers is like, we are going to go the distance and kill ourselves to try and help your film get made.
Mm-hmm. Now, since we're supposed to be talking about financing here,
yes.
First of all, do you have a typical budget range that you work with?
Everything has been, well, I guess right now, everything's been under 7 million, with most of it being under 2 million. And I think that we are actually moving more towards that sort of like 5 to 7 range, while at the same time trying to keep that like 1 to 2 million smaller budget projects alive. The two things I'll say about that are one, like I look at companies like Panavision or Lideye, like post houses, and they work with a variety of projects, right? They work with like Panavision is giving cameras to or renting their cameras out to the biggest new Transformers movie and to our little indie productions.
Yeah. And
I think the idea is like, we look at it the same way of like, how can we continue growing and working on larger things, but at the same time, like continue having smaller projects happen in our company. And the way that we do that is we actually work with a great group of producers that we've sort of been raising from, years ago. So people who have been our coordinators, PMs, line producers, co-producers, producing alongside of us. And now we're starting to empower them to be producers themselves, with us actually stepping into EP roles, just sort of overseeing and helping it come together.
What are some of the unique obstacles you find in that budget range?
I guess one of the biggest questions is sort of like, how do you do it union or non-union? And by that I'm talking about IATSE and Teamsters. And it's not something that I like. I don't like to work outside of the union. Like I actually prefer everything to be union. But the problem is that like the economics of this industry are so difficult, and that when you're making a movie for, say, $1 million, it's not like you're making it so cheap that you're guaranteeing recoupment and like financial success. If anything, it's actually like rare for that to happen. Usually like you're in the 1% of indie films if you make it for $1 million and sell it for more. And so for us, it's like, how do you get the most money on the screen? That's kind of like that starts the question, I think, is where are we going to shoot it, and are we going to do it union or non-union? And if we're going to do it non-union, like what are the risks in that? Because you could always get flipped, and is our financier prepared if that happens? That like $200,000 risk that they're taking.
Is there an extra bag of money just in case?
Right. That's what we say in those happen. I mean, I'll go back and just say that like for us, like we really don't do it non-union unless we feel like it's the only way to pull the film off.
Sure. Where do you look for financing, and how has that changed as you're developing your track record?
Yeah, financing is so difficult.
That's the big mystery, right? It was like, where do you even look?
Yeah. I mean, and you're catching me at an interesting point in my career. Like I'm definitely in a my company, like we're transitioning into larger things, and we're becoming more involved with the world of distributors and studios, but still in a very small degree. And so the thing I would say, I have a lot of thoughts on it, which is, first off, it's a crazy thing to ask for anyone in this world to learn the jobs of producing or directing or any sort of like filmmaking task, and then be like, and now raise money.
Right.
In some ways, it feels like it's a whole other job.
Right.
And I think certain people take that on as their own job, packaging agents. But yeah, I mean, it's a tough thing because basically you're going to someone, you're saying, hey, I have this idea for this invention. Here's what it's going to look like. I would like $1 million from you, and I'm going to run off and go make this invention. I'm going to bring it back to you several months or a year from now. And sort of like you're kind of asking someone for it's a crazy ask.
It's crazy. And you don't know if you're going to make money or not, but you do a business plan that shows maybe you'll make money.
I mean, to be honest, we have to be honest. And it's really unfortunate that there are so many flim-flam people in this industry, because sometimes we'll meet financiers who've been burned before, and we will be like, man, I wish we were the first people that they worked with, because we would have been transparent. We would have been honest from day one. Unfortunately, I also think sometimes people with money want to hear from the hucksters. Like they get enticed by that. But
I also wonder how many of those people are looking to have a loss for their taxes.
Yeah, I haven't personally come across it, but I've heard.
Yeah.
I mean, the other thing is that, finding people that are like angel investors. Like we worked with this film fund once where we got to meet some of the investors, and they weren't seeing a penny, but they were so happy to be part of this group of films that were all doing well on the festivals and on the award circuits. So sometimes people are like that. I mean,
so that's the added thing, because it's not a purely financial decision.
Right.
It's also they get to be involved in making movies.
I think the important thing for us is to try and identify, at least when it comes to private equity, right? Because there's a big difference. There's investors who are wealthy individuals who are putting money into films for their own reasons, and then there are studios and film financiers who are actually part of this business, and their goal is to stay in the black so that they can survive.
Yeah.
So when it comes to individuals, wealthy individuals, I think it's really important to ask the question, like, what are they looking for? And to both ask them that and then ask yourselves that, because sometimes maybe they're not being totally forthright about it. And the trick there is to deliver on that. Because I don't think most people, you're right, I don't think most people purely want revenue. If they did, they would be in a different business. But maybe they want to be part of something. Maybe they want to contribute to the arts. Maybe they're really interested in one of the components of your film, whether that's a filmmaker or a piece of talent. Or
the story.
Or the story. And then it's about sort of like, how can I deliver for them? So it's you have two jobs. You have the job of making the movie, and then also the job of sort of delivering on their expectations. And if you can identify that, if you don't identify that, I should say, you're going to go through the experience and it's going to be terrible. And there's nothing worse than the wrath of a wealthy financier who feels like they were promised something that they weren't given. So, but if you can figure it out, do a weekly call with them, bring them onto set, introduce them to the key people. If they want to see every draft of the script, show them every draft of the script. I think the worst thing a producer can do is say, I found the money, and then keep that person at arm's length. It's never beneficial. But if you can find those, if you're worried about them being part of every part of the process, well, first off, maybe you should identify it's not worth working with that person if they want to, say, co-direct the film.
Right.
But try to identify the things that are important to them and just deliver on those. And
then how do you vet a financier so you're not 2 weeks in and left holding the bag?
Still trying to find that out. I mean, I think the thing there's, and this goes with everyone in this business, is if you work with someone new, call everyone you can that's worked with them before. Not just their references that they give you, but go on to IMDb and see what films they've worked on before and call people involved. I'll say this. I've worked with some really bad crew members, people who've stolen money, and I make sure that they have a credit on the film because I want them to be on IMDb, because I want another producer to call me and say, hey, what was it like to work with so-and-so? And I can say, don't work with them. They are going to damage the production.
They are a notorious embezzler.
Yes.
Let me do you a favor. Do you need a lawyer?
I'm super fortunate that I have two partners. One of them is my producing partner. He is a former lawyer.
Perfect.
Yep, which is nice. And he was incredibly instrumental in the start of our company, because he would take on the task of business affairs, like being our lawyer. And then we got a new partner. So the first partner, his name's Greg Gilreath. And then the second partner, and he came later in our trajectory. His name is Zach Locke. He's the former business affairs head of Blumhouse. And obviously through the Blumhouse movies got to know him, and he left and joined us. He is also a lawyer. And
so you don't need a lawyer.
So I don't need a lawyer. And he's not a producer. He's sort of a COO type, overseeing organization, business affairs, legal, doing union contracts and actor negotiations. Right. So I will say this. Do you need a lawyer? Not really. You could look at your own deals, but is a lawyer beneficial? Incredibly so. And I have friends who have aligned themselves with a lawyer way early in their career, people who were doing things for pro bono, and they've become like lifelong friends and lifelong collaborators. Like, I think it's worth finding someone early on that might be that person for you. And I think that the important thing to do is like incredibly respect their time. Like, these are people who are paid, by the hour, if not by the 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And if you ever do see an influx of cash from anything that they had a piece in, even if they didn't charge you a fee at the time, if you end up getting paid, send them some money. We did that a couple times starting up where we saw revenue and immediately like cut checks to the early lawyers we worked with just to be like, hey, we ended up actually making money off this thing and we'd like you to share in that.
Yeah, that's great advice. How do financiers differ from distributors?
In our experience, again, it kind of goes to like wealthy individuals, independent film finance companies, and then distributors. So we have relationships with a lot of distributors, but we've only actually set up one thing with a distributor exclusively. And I mean, working with them it's really nice because there seems to be a really strong system in place. There's development execs, there's a head of production, there's infrastructure there that has been shaped and
it's
works.
A machine.
Yes. And there's a lot of, and by the way, I've heard horror stories. I'll just say we're working with Amazon right now. They're incredible. Like I really feel supported by them. I feel like they are in it for the right reasons. And I feel like they know what they know and they know what they don't know. So I'm not getting any of the sort of like I said, horror stories that my peers have told me. But when it comes to sole financiers or film finance companies, there's really strong personality there. When you work with an individual or with a film finance company, you're kind of at the whim of the person who's either that individual or the person kind of in charge of that company. Mm-hmm. And we've had projects fall apart because one day they just weren't interested in it anymore. Or
they might change their mind halfway through.
Exactly. Or change their mind on the deal points. We agreed to a certain amount of different elements and then they kind of pulled the rug on us like 4 weeks before production. And actually on that one, it actually killed the production. So it's difficult. And that's why I said we've made mistakes, right? I think that looking back at that one, I think that maybe that's something that we could have foreseen. It's very easy when you get money, when you get financing for a project, because it's so hard to do and because you feel so lucky that you kind of put your blinders on because you just want it to work out.
Right.
And
let's ignore the red flags. Let's just get it done.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, I think in those situations it's a little more worrisome. But if you keep your head about you, if you talk to people who've worked with them in the past, maybe you can kind of identify the minefield a little bit earlier and avoid those mines.
Yeah, I think that would be something that just comes with repeat experience with those people.
Yeah, and here's the other thing. To be honest, one of the major ways that we find financing is we work with the same people. Mm-hmm. We were really at the start of our company, and even still to this day, if there's a project that already has financing that we could jump on, that we like the project, but even more than that, we like the people that are working on it, we'll jump on that project and see it through. Not just because we like the project, but because we want to show that financing entity how good we are and start building a relationship with them. And so it's we're doing one for them and with the hopes of that in the future, we can bring things to them and we know what the working relationship is like already. It's something that I've seen again with my peers where they've set up projects with a larger A24 or some other big distributor or finance entity. And then we see them working with them again and again and again. And it's because that company or entity or person really likes this producer and trusts them.
You're putting deposits in that reputation bank and in your relationship bank.
Exactly. And there's this idea of outward marketing. I mean, look at Blumhouse or Pixar or anything that sort of has a name recognition. Mm-hmm. The public knows it. But I think that there is also an internal facing persona that you can give in this business, and that
for sure.
Yeah. And that's something that we've been growing. We want our name synonymous with quality work and saying something and delivering on it. Mm-hmm. We want a reputation. And everyone in this business that's what they should be thinking of is not just how do I make the next movie, but how do I continue to build a quality reputation that ensures work for decades from now.
And nice people who you want to be around for how many hours a day, for how many months at a time.
It's true. It's so crazy that our industry has sort of discusses or embraces or tells wonderful stories about sort of the big temper, big personality jerks.
We've tolerated monsters for a long time.
A long time. And the thing is, like, you look at like David O. Selznick, who's like the sort of like quintessential like old producer, right? There's like books on him. You can read all of his memos. And the thing is, like, the guy died poor, and it's because he was a jerk. And the thing is, this industry, it ebbs and it flows. And when you're riding high, everyone puts up with all of your bullshit. And when you're at the bottom, people then decide, am I going to help this person out? Am I going to lift them up because they were great to work with in the past? Or should I just sort of like let them linger?
Yeah.
And that's what happened to Selznick. And I think that happens to a lot of these sort of like jerks, whether they're producers or filmmakers or financiers or anything.
Yes. How have you seen kind of the financing for movies change over the last few years?
I feel like I'm so in it that it's really hard to get an objective perspective on it. I can only speak about it from like an individual standpoint, which is that I feel like, at least when I started getting involved in films, that I only caught the tail end of the revenue you could get from streaming services acquiring your films. Like I watched as sort of the MGs, the minimum guarantees, started getting lower. And it makes it really difficult. It makes it really difficult when you're intending to make a film for a very small amount of money. It's going to get a bunch of acclaim, and yet at the same time, like, going into a festival that it's, if you're not one of the 3 or 4 that Variety writes about having this like crazy sale, that the odds are that you're actually going to sell the film for less than you made it for, and then hope that it finds success with an audience so that your financiers can make their money back.
Yeah.
I am incredibly hopeful that in the next couple of years, we see a return to big buying from streamers, because there's now a new glut of streamers coming. We've already kind of seen in the last Sundance with Amazon acquiring so many films. At the same time, if it does happen, it will be a bubble that will eventually explode. So it's like, I think I'm really hopeful that the next couple of years provide a ton of new buyers, but I'm also hopeful that we and everyone else can also like not expect that this is the rest of your lives, that this is actually just going to be like,
this is it now.
This is a contained moment.
Yeah. So what are the pieces today that you're putting together? Is it foreign sales? Is it streaming? What are the pieces that you have to put together?
Right. So, I mean, it's always easiest with a check. But it's not always the case. You get one. We've actually benefited hugely from a partnership with XYZ. They do domestic sales, they raise financing, they do international sales. They're just a group of really great people who care about films and care about filmmakers. They sold our film Lucky. They sold our film The Wind with ICM, who actually also really, really love. And they've been instrumental in terms of finding backstop deals for some of our films, finding foreign pre-sales for our films. So I think partnering with a company that specializes in that is really helpful. I'll also say, like, sometimes it feels like fool's gold. Like, I've met so many people who've promised this for years now, and it's only really with XYZ that I've actually seen delivery on that. But I also have to chalk it up to, I think we might just be in a different position than where we were 3 years ago. So I think that we're actually in a different position where not only are we getting to work with a company that does this and does it well, but now they can use us as a proof that this is a company that is now known for delivering quality projects based on our slate.
Yeah, I was wondering how objective you can be about trends, because part of it is the trend of your company's growth, and that also affects the kind of financing you get. Can you say this is the trend of financing in the world, or it's the trend for your company because that's where your company is right now?
Exactly. Like, I don't think I'll be able to sort of. It's like anything else. It's like history.
Right.
It's like I
ask you in 20 years.
Yeah.
I will see it.
In 20 years, I will 100% be able to talk about where film financing was in 2019.
Okay, we will come back and ask you, because I'm sure we'll still be doing this podcast in 20 years. Do you want to talk about what do distribution deals look like, meaning licensing versus selling? Or maybe this is a question, like with an Amazon, Amazon can buy a project, or you can release on Amazon and get paid per download.
Right. So it's tough. There are definitely people who will do like self-distribution, and in those situations, they'll put their film up on a platform like Amazon, and then they get paid if it's on Amazon,
2 cents.
right? If it's Prime, they get paid 2 cents per view or something. I mean, it's just not. I'm not like looking to make a lot of money, but I am looking to recoup the investments of people that invest in our films.
So you're not in that game.
Not really. No. I mean, really, it's about either making a film or project for a company that already has distribution. So that's like an Amazon, they already have a distribution plan.
Right.
Or bringing a film to a festival and trying to sell it there. And if we are selling it there, the first thing is to try and get like as good of an all-world deal as possible, just in one fell swoop. Like when we sold Lucky to Magnolia, that was just done, check. Did it all at South by, don't have to think about it again now.
Right.
No, the movie starts making revenue. Or like in the case of The Wind, there was a stronger domestic offer. So we went with IFC for North America and then partnered up with an international sales agent to carve out the rest of the world.
So you can piece those things apart.
Exactly. But, I think that in those situations, it's just about working with the right partners. Mm-hmm. I mentioned XYZ before. Magnolia, actually, they were the ones that came in as the international sales agents on The Wind. Like, we watch what they do. They report to us, but we're not really dictating who they should be selling it to, how much they should be selling it for. I think if you're in that position, then it's not really a good relationship because you're probably not happy with what they're doing. But in these situations, again, I think we just partnered with really good people.
So they can do their job.
Exactly.
How involved are you in the release plan for a movie?
It depends on the distributor and how much they want us involved. I mean, the thing that we really care about our filmmakers. And the filmmakers do care about the involvement in the release. And so, we try to get meaningful consultation or approval for posters or trailers or things that reflect the film. Sometimes we get that, sometimes we don't. Sometimes, part of that sale is giving all of that to a distributor and hoping that they treat the film right. But, I think it's really about our filmmaker identifying what's important to them and then backing that up. Like, I think that, unfortunately or fortunately or whatever, I think that, say, a filmmaker doesn't really care about the release strategy of their film, we may not get involved at all or as much because it's that enthusiasm that's going to drive think pieces or reviews or mm-hmm. Q&As. So, but I will say that, I've mentioned them before, the filmmakers of CAM were incredibly they very much wanted to be part of that release, and they very much wanted to shape the message of the film, and had spent a lot of time, even before the film was made, building relationships with critics and journalists so that by the time the film came out, there were things to talk about. There were pieces that could be released. And the film, it's about digital identity. It's about sex work. It's about the sort of, important topics beyond just like how good a movie is.
Right.
So with them, it was, even though we don't earn more money, even though it doesn't affect the financial outcome of the film, because that was a film that was distributed by Netflix. All it was going to do was affect the amount of people that see the movie. Mm-hmm. And yet, because it was important to our filmmakers, like, we got behind it 100% and tried to like open doors and help as much as possible with it.
And that can help the next thing.
Exactly. That's the thing we always talk to our filmmakers about, which is like, your goal with making this film is making a film so good that you get to make your next film.
Right. Great. Is there anything that I should have asked you about financing that I didn't ask you that you're just dying to give us that pearl?
I have one pearl, if I can. It's something I've actually been thinking a lot about recently.
Bring it.
Which is that I listen to podcasts, I see Q&As, and you kind of start hearing the same advice over and over and over again. And it's then that everyone's heard many times, like, go out there and go make it. Go make the thing.
Just do it.
Just do it. And they're not wrong, but I've thought a lot about what that means. And
it's not very specific.
It's not very specific. So I have a variation on that, and it's crazy, but I really think it's the most important thing, which is go make a feature-length film. And I know people don't have the money for that. And I know we're, go shoot it on iPhones or go shoot it on whatever. But I will say this, like, I see a lot of shorts. There are a lot of shorts in this world. And if you're going to make the best short ever, go for it. Because it'll be seen by many people. It'll be passed around. But here's the thing. You're probably not going to. It's really hard to make the perfect short. And oftentimes you go to a film festival and these are curated best shorts, and not all of them are like hitting it out of the park. But here's the thing. A feature film is forgivable. If you can go out and make a feature film, there are places for it. There are festivals. Festivals I think are seeing less features than they are shorts. And like I said, it's more forgivable. So it might be rough around the edges. It might be rough in these places, but I think people are more receptive to the parts that that do work. But if you make a short, people don't look at it that way. People aren't looking for promise in a short. They're looking for something that's...
Your short better be great.
It's got to be perfect in order for someone to be interested in you as a filmmaker. But a feature, a little more forgivable.
No one has said that. Very interesting. Thank you so much for doing it.
I hope that helps.
Yeah, thank you.
Cool. Thanks for having me. This was great.
We hope hope you enjoyed this episode of Catch a Break. We'd like to thank our guest, Adam Hendricks. Please check out the website at catchabreakpodcast.com and follow us on all the social media. Catch a Break is produced in partnership with Catchlight Films, Rose Colored Pictures, and The Other 50%. And it is also sponsored by Crewvee, an online solution for producers to find and promote local crew and production support worldwide. Find them at crewvee.com. That's CREWVIE.com. And thank you to Andrew Jocelyn, who created our theme music, Mantra for a Struggling Artist. Thanks for listening, and be sure to check out our next episode where we dive into crowdfunding.